You ought to think for a second about the Sandy, pay attention, please. I want you all to think about the digestive system in terms of what does it do for the body as a whole. So what is just like the one big important thing that the digestive system does for the body? Who cares? Why is that important to my body? So the digestive system, you all just said, breaks down food, but what is the whole purpose behind it? Okay, for energy. What do you all think about that? Does the digestive system have anything to do with energy? What is it doing for the body? And I guess that's what she's saying, providing energy for the body. Okay, think it through. So the digestive system, if we did not have a digestive system, let's put it that way. You wouldn't bring anything in, you wouldn't send anything out. So, but what is the benefit to the body? Why would we need a digestive system? No, y'all think. Well, the toxins that come in go out, in a sense. So if we didn't bring them in, and I see what you're saying, just the excretion of it. Right, okay, I see what you're saying. The urinary system does that, though. Really, and that's kind of a good comment. It's not something I thought of before. The digestive tract is external. You don't think of it that way. And what that means is the material that goes through the digestive system and all the way through and out. Whatever comes out has never been part of the human body, has never been inside of any tissues, inside of any tissue fluid. Okay, so it has never mixed with the body, so it's kind of just passing through, and on the way through it's delivering nutrients, and that's what I'm trying to get you all to think about. So as food goes through the digestive tract, the big picture is what she said, the food that goes through provides energy, right? We need to eat because our cells need energy, okay? So just put those together. So the digestive system, how do our cells and tissues get energy? They produce ATP, okay? So whenever you say energy related to living things, the only type of energy that living cells can use is ATP, okay? Food doesn't contain ATP. What food contains is molecules that will make ATP form from another molecule. I know this is kind of outside the scope of what we're doing, but I really want you all to understand how all this works. All right, so we know ATP, the importance of ATP. Without ATP, our cells couldn't live. Okay, so the cell, in order to live, has to carry out thousands of reactions constantly, and sending molecules in and out. Muscles are cells, they contract, so all of these activities require energy. All the cell's energy comes from ATP. Okay? Now, what happens though is ATP is more like a rechargeable battery. If ATP helps a muscle to contract, it loses the energy. Now it needs more energy to become ATP again. So when ATP loses energy, it becomes ADP, adenosine diphosphate. ADP doesn't have enough energy to supply the cell. with the activities that it has to do. So somehow we have to get ADP to convert back to ATP. The only way to make a molecule with little energy, in order to make it a molecule with great energy, something has to be added to this process, right? Okay, so ATP had the big energy. That energy, let's say, was used in contracting a muscle. So now the energy is in the muscle, and the ADP has no energy left. So there has to be something to bring energy back in so that ATP can convert to ATP. Okay, and really all it is, have you ever seen a picture of an ATP molecule? You have adenosine, which is just a molecule, and it has 3 phosphates attached to it. Okay, so that makes it triphosphate. The key here is in this bond. That bond right there has high energy. So on ATP, those 3 phosphates are there, and that energy, when that bond breaks, it releases energy that goes to allow the muscle to contract. And I don't want to get too deep in here. I probably already have. But that means the molecule of ATP just lost 1 phosphate. Okay? Now, to add a phosphate back to this requires a whole lot of energy. But that's what's needed to convert ADP to what? To ATP. So somehow, the cell has to keep getting energy so that that phosphate can be added back to ADP to make the ATP molecule again. Okay? So what is that energy source coming back to the cell to convert ADP to ATP? Glucose. So the foods we eat, anything with carbs, any carbohydrate, can be broken down to glucose, and glucose can provide this cell with the ability to make ATP. So this is how ATP is made. Okay? So it's not made from scratch. It's more recharged, so to speak. So the foods we eat recharge ATP. So you can think of it that way. Okay? So now that you get that, not only glucose, we'll see that there are some other molecules as well. So that's why we need ATP in the blood, glucose in the blood all the time, as well as oxygen for that reaction. All right, so the digestive tract is also referred to as GI tract, gastrointestinal, even alimentary canal. Really, though, the gastrointestinal only refers to the stomach and the intestines. So that's strictly speaking. So gastro, that word part, gastro means what? Stomach, and then obviously intestinal means intestine. So that's really specifically what that term is referring to. But most of the time it's used interchangeably with the other terms. So food passes along the length from mouth to anus. Various accessory organs are also in the body. So just the tube that the food passes through is referred to as the digestive tract or alimentary canal. And then the other organs, liver, pancreas, we'll see in a moment, are called accessory organs. All right, so in the grand scheme of things, I kind of like this figure because it gives you an overview of how the digestive system works in unison with the other systems in order to allow the body as a whole to continue to function. So you have the circulatory system or cardiovascular system here. Look at everything that communicates with the cardiovascular system or interacts in some way. So if we look at what we just talked about, the digestive system, nutrients that pass through the digestive system diffuse across into the circulatory system. And again, what is that for? Where's the glucose going? So where is it going though? to all the cells of the body. So those cells can make ATP. Okay? And we talked about this part quite a bit in the circulatory system. So oxygen, so you get oxygen from what system? The respiratory system brings oxygen into the blood. Digestive system brings glucose. Where does the oxygen and glucose go again? To the body tissues. Okay? What part of the circulatory system allows that transfer? Allows for oxygen and glucose to get into the body's cells and tissues. Capillaries. Tissue capillaries. Remember? So that's that gas exchange. Remember the second gas exchange is at the tissue capillaries. Okay? So that's how glucose and oxygen are delivered to the tissues. So they can do what? Make ATP. Right. Tissues get rid of waste and CO2, sending it into the circulatory system. CO2 goes where? To the respiratory system. Waste from the cells of the tissue, waste materials are eliminated through the urinary system. Okay, so that's a really nice picture to kind of put it all together. All right, the GI tract. So just like the circulatory system, you have another path that you all need to know. You had the respiratory, and now you have the GI tract, or digestive system. Okay, so the digestive tract starts at the mouth and follow that path on. So just imagine him swallowing. He took a bite of a Big Mac and now he's swallowing it. So where does the Big Mac go? So first into the mouth, in the oral cavity, and then the pharynx. Okay, to the esophagus, and then into the stomach. See how that enters the stomach there. From the stomach to small intestine, which starts here, and then to but all of this is what? The colon or large intestine. And then from the large intestine to the rectum and then the anus. So that is the path of food through the digestive tract. Okay? So the key for this part of the test is to understand what is happening to that Big Mac as it passes through each part. Okay? So I'm going to put the path up here, and I want you to learn the function of each of those parts, what happens there. Okay? First, though, let's go to the overall stages of the digestive process. So the digestive system, the organs system that processes food, extracts nutrients, and eliminates the residue. The process of digestion occurs in 5 stages. So know the stages, know what each one means, and understand what each one means. So ingestion just means bringing food into the body, okay? Bringing food into the oral cavity. Ingestion, intake of food. Ingestion, and then digestion. What does digestion mean? So digestion means breaking down the food. Okay? So what do we mean by breakdown? Right. Break it down to smaller pieces, right? And so that's one part, and that's actually called mechanical digestion. You all need to know the different types of digestion. Mechanical and understand the difference. Mechanical digestion is what you all just said. It's the physical breakdown or breaking the food particles into smaller food particles. Okay? So physical breakdown or ripping apart or making smaller. So if we're talking about the Big Mac, you're just breaking the bun down into smaller pieces of bun. Okay? That's different from from chemical breakdown or chemical digestion. Any idea what chemical digestion is? So we're still talking about breakdown, but what's being broken down sort of to what? So we said with mechanical breakdown, big pieces are broken down to smaller pieces. So enzymes act on the food, but what does that do to the food?
Breaks it down. Breaks it down further to substances that can be absorbed by the body.
Good.
Like monomers.
Yes, very good. So chemical breakdown involves enzymes which convert the food particles from polymers, and I'll go back through that again in a moment, to monomers. So you're breaking down polymers, large molecules, to their monomers, small molecules. One example of that, breaking down polymers to their monomers, building blocks. Do you all remember the 4 organic molecules of life? 4 organic molecules of life. One of them is carbohydrates. Huh? Protein, lipids, and nucleic acids. You all do not leave anatomy and physiology and not know the molecules of life. Carbohydrates, lipids, proteins, and nucleic acids. And I'll explain that in a minute. That's so important. But before I jump into there, carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, nucleic acids. So starch falls into which of those categories? Okay, so y'all know that. Starch is a carbohydrate, and starch is what is it? A monosaccharide, disaccharide, or polysaccharide? Poly. Good. So y'all remember some stuff. Great. So starch is a polysaccharide. What does it mean to be a polysaccharide? So it's made up of many something, many monomers, many subunits. Okay? I like to think of it as the polysaccharide is a polymer. All polymers are made up of many monomers. Okay? So polysaccharide is a polymer made up of many monosaccharides. Okay? Just like proteins are made up of amino acids. Okay? So y'all learned this before, probably in 103 and 201. But I like to think of it as a polymer as a pearl necklace. But the pearl necklace is made up of individual pearls, which are the monomers. So that may help you think about. So building blocks, that's why they're also called building blocks. To make a house, you need individual bricks, which are the monomers. Okay, so when we say chemical digestion, what we're doing is we're breaking down that starch, which is a polymer or polysaccharide, and we're breaking it down to many glucose molecules, which are monosaccharides. So glucose is a monosaccharide, and in order for those French fries that you're eating with your Big Mac, in order for you to get the benefit of the energy, remember the nutrients from the foods we eat have to be absorbed into the bloodstream and then sent to the body cells to create energy or to re-energize the ATP. But this process has to happen in the digestive tract because starch cannot get from the digestive tract into the bloodstream. Okay, so all polymers are too large to cross over from the digestive tract into the bloodstream. So what the digestive tract has to do is break the beef patty, which is a protein, down to amino acids. So the amino acids can get over, but the protein molecules cannot. So we're breaking down polymers here into monomers, and that is chemical digestion. Okay? Now, so again, the whole benefit is to get the nutrients into the bloodstream. So the next step is going to be absorption. That's what absorption is. The uptake of those nutrients, the monomers, from the digestive tract over into the bloodstream. So now those molecules can be used to for the cells to make energy. Okay? And then the next thing is compaction. So whatever is not moved or absorbed into the bloodstream continues through the digestive tract. And compaction occurs, which is absorbing water and consolidating the indigestible residue into feces. So that process is compaction, and that occurs before elimination, which is defecation. So those are the stages of digestion. Okay. Sorry. So, organic molecules of life. I'm going to say you all need to know that too, because that's when y'all don't need to leave A&P and not know. The organic molecules of life. Organic molecules of life are carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. If I see you all in Walmart a year from now, I'm going to ask you, what are the 4 organic molecules of life? Okay, y'all better tell me. I can go back and change grades now. Okay, so carbs, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. So why are these called molecules of life? Any idea? So you need carbs for energy. Okay. So actually all of these provide energy. Okay. They make a balanced diet. So you notice the food panels all have the grams of each of these. So that's an interesting observation. They're really called molecules of life because that's what living things are made of. So we're made up mostly of carbs, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. How do I know? Because that's what cells are made of, and that's all we are cells, right? Think about a cell and the structure of a cell. What is the cell membrane made of? Y'all remember? The phospholipid bilayer, right? Lipids. And what else is embedded in the membrane? Proteins, right? We have carbs in there on the outside, and also, so the makeup of living things is going to be these four molecules. Nucleic acids, where have we heard that before? So DNA. DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid. DNA and RNA. Okay? So that is why they're called the molecules of life. And so the foods we eat then, the foods that we eat come from some other living thing, right? So can you think of any food that is not from living, that was one time living? Can you think of foods that were at one point not living things? So if we're eating living things, they're made of what? Cells, which are made of these molecules. So these are the molecules of life. And they provide our cells with energy as well. So that's kind of secondary, though, to the reason. So again, what I want you all to know are what are the monomers of these organic macro. They're usually called macro. What does macro mean? Macro with an A. Large. So they're large molecules, macromolecules of life. So carbs are made up of what subunits? Monosaccharides. Proteins are broken down to what monomers? You all just told me. Amino acids. Lipids are broken down to good fatty acids. Fatty acids and glycerol. And nucleic acids are broken down to nucleotides. Okay, so those are the subunits of the organic macromolecules of life. So what you have to think about then is as food passes down, the food particles are going to be in the form of the macromolecule for the most part. Okay? So as they pass through, in order to get the energy, they have to pass over to the bloodstream. And in order to pass over to the bloodstream, they have to be in what form? In the subunit form. Okay? So that's kind of the grand scheme of what the digestive system is doing. All right. Now, so let's start with the carbohydrate. And what I want you all to know are the monosaccharides and disaccharides. You all probably could tell me some of those. So the monosaccharides by name are good, glucose, fructose, and glucose is sometimes called dextrose as well. So if you see dextrose, just think glucose. And the lactose. Those are monosaccharides. Again, the monosaccharides, glucose, fructose, and galactose. The disaccharides are good, maltose, sucrose, and lactose. Okay, so if they're called disaccharides, that means what? Then yes, you all, this will be on the test. So I hope y'all write these down. They're not on the PowerPoint. So maltose, sucrose, and lactose, they're disaccharides made up of two simple sugars, which are these, two monosaccharides. So disaccharides are made of two monosaccharides. Okay, the two monosaccharides just form a bond with each other to make a disaccharide. So then maltose is made from combining two what? Glucose. So two glucose molecules bound together make one maltose. Fructose plus glucose makes sucrose. And galactose plus glucose makes lactose. Okay? So maltose, that's malt sugar, beer sugar, or the malt liquor. That's beer sugar. Sucrose is cane sugar, white sugar that you put on cereal. That is sucrose. And lactose, milk sugar, the sugar in milk. Okay? So, if you drink milk, how does the energy get from your digestive tract to your cell? What has to happen to the lactose in your milk while it's in your digestive tract? Chemical digestion, exactly. So that means the chemical digestion will do what? Break lactose down to galactose and glucose. Y'all see it? So lactose has to be broken down to monomers because lactose can't get from the digestive tract into the bloodstream. So it has to be broken down to its simplest form, the monosaccharides, which we now know are galactose and glucose. So galactose and glucose are sent into the bloodstream. Okay? And for sucrose, so sucrose cannot cross over to the bloodstream. It has to be what? Chemically digested. Right. Okay? And I'll go ahead and tell you all the enzyme. So in order to break lactose down, there's an enzyme that does the chemical digestion. Good. The enzyme is called lactase. So the digestive tract secretes the enzyme lactase, and lactase breaks lactose down to its monomers. The enzyme that breaks down sucrose is sucrase. Good. And guess on the maltose? Maltase. Okay, so that's the chemical digestion that occurs when we consume foods with those carbohydrates. Okay? So, for a person who's lactose intolerant, what do you think is wrong? The lactose doesn't break down? Why? Because they may not have enough the enzyme lactase, right? Okay. And then tell me the polysaccharide. We talked about one, and we talked about this one too. Not much. Where have we talked about glycogen before? Good. Glycogen is stored in the liver. And what's its purpose? Good. So glycogen is a polysaccharide made up of a bunch of glucose molecules. So that's what makes it a polysaccharide. Starch is the same. Starch is made from a bunch of glucose molecules. So they're really almost the same. They have slightly different structures, but their functions are the same. Glycogen has the function of allowing animals to store excess glucose. Okay? Plants store excess glucose as starch. So animals store excess glucose as glycogen. Plants store excess glucose in the form of starch. And the last one, cellulose. Cellulose. Cellulose is a polysaccharide. And you all remember from Biology 103 anything about cellulose? It's found in the cell walls of plants. So it provides structure to the cell wall. And so we find these in like green leafy vegetables. So cellulose is considered fiber or roughage. Very important to the diet, but it cannot be digested. Does that make sense? So a food that we cannot even digest is important for our diet. So what do we mean when we say cellulose cannot be digested? It can't be broken down, right, to glucose, to monomers. Why? Why wouldn't our digestive system be able to break it down chemically? It must not have the enzyme, right? So other animals have that enzyme, okay? Other species have the enzyme. Humans just do not. So why would that make it good for us, though? I thought the purpose of the digestive system was to break down nutrients and get energy sources for the cell. Good. Very good. So since it's fiber or roughage, it goes straight through, pushing all the junk out. So we have a lot of waste sitting in our digestive tract waiting to be eliminated, and that just comes along and kind of plows everything out. And that's important because if waste material sits too long, it's toxic, right? So it can cause the cells of the digestive tract to respond in different ways and possibly even cancer, develop cancer. So you hear of colon cancer and other digestive cancers, especially later on in life. So it takes a while for that to generate. Okay? So those are the carbs. Those are really the only ones I wanted to break down in that fashion. So make sure you all know the monosaccharides, the disaccharides, and the polysaccharides. Also know the function or how the polysaccharides are used, where the disaccharides are found in what types of food, and the monosaccharides, know them by name. Okay? You should also know what disaccharides break down to, each of the disaccharides. All right. So think of some foods that are high in carbs, high in carbohydrates. So anything sweet, right? Candy, cake, cookies, ice cream. I didn't hear you. Pasta, exactly. Pasta, polysaccharides, breads, rice. Beans have some, but beans are a rich source of protein as well. What about fruits? Fruits? Right, fruits don't have protein and, for the most part, protein or lipid. So fruits and vegetables are primarily carbohydrates. Yeah, so those are good for us. So don't think carbs are, I know everybody's low carb this, like carbs are dangerous, but what are we supposed to eat more of than anything? Fruits and vegetables, exactly. Okay, so those are carbs. What foods are high in protein? Meats. Right. So any living thing that had muscles, right? So when we eat foods that are high in protein, we're eating the animal's muscles, right? If you bite into a chicken leg, The meaty part is the muscle. And if you all think back to the muscles, what do we find inside of muscle cells? Remember what muscle cells have inside? What do muscles do that's so important? They contract. So what is the contractile machinery? Good. She just came right out and said it. Actin and myosin. Yes, actin and myosin. And those are proteins, right? Nielsen? So actin and myosin fill up the muscle cell. In fact, if you all remember, when people bodybuild, what's happening? They're growing new actin and myosin filaments. So that's why bodybuilders consume a lot of what? Protein shakes, which break down to amino acids. Proteins break down to amino acids. So those amino acids go into the cell to build actin and myosin, muscles. So it all makes sense if y'all put it together. It's right there. All right. Now, so let's get to the pad. I spent too much time on the other stuff. Yeah. All right, so now that you all understand chemical digestion, now let's follow that Big Mac through the digestive tract and look at the function of each. So the mouth, including the oral cavity, is the part of the body that ingests the food, brings food into the body. And so what else happens in the mouth functionally? So we have mechanical digestion, right? Right, so your teeth, so remember teeth are digestive organs, the tongue also. So those are bringing the food into the body and breaking it down physically. Remember mechanical digestion. And also you have those salivary glands, right? Secreting saliva that moistens the food so it's easier to move through the alimentary canal. And so that's kind of what's going on there. Now, as far as the digestive process, so remember, for chemical digestion, you need what? Enzymes. Okay, so enzymes are needed there. So as we go along the path, I'm going to let you know which enzymes are present and what they're breaking down. So in the oral cavity, very good, you have salivary amylase. Naomi, you've been answering a lot of questions. I give you some points too. Good job. So you have salivary amylase. So amylase, and remember that most of the enzymes end in ASE, right? So amylase is an enzyme, and what it breaks down is starch. Okay, so amylase is an enzyme secreted by the salivary glands. And also the pancreas, later on we'll see, secretes amylase, but it's called pancreatic. Okay. And so what else? So that's about it there. Then the food goes through from the mouth to the what? It's not yet. The pharynx. Good. Say that again. Pharynx. So the bite of Big Mac is kind of smushed up now and is going to the back of the throat to be swallowed, and then it's going to enter Esophagus. Okay, so you really have no enzymes or anything here. The only one in the oral cavity that is secreted is salivary amylase and also lingual lipase. Lipase, what do you think it breaks down? Lipids. Good. So lipase is also secreted, but it's not activated until later, so it's not breaking down lipids just yet. So I'm only putting amylase since that's the only thing that has started working. So what would you say the function of the pharynx is to the digestive system? All right. Swallowing. Deglutition. Swallowing is the primary function of the pharynx. And then the esophagus, what do you think its function is? Huh? Passing the bolus, and that's what the Big Mac is called when it's in the mouth and on down to the stomach. So it sends the bolus down into the stomach. And there's a process of muscle contraction that pushes it down that way. Okay? And that's called peristalsis. Good. So peristalsis, and that I'll show you all that in a moment. So peristalsis is where the digestive tract contracts in one spot to push the food particle here, and then that part contracts to push it down even further. So that's peristaltic contractions. And so that's kind of the main function of the esophagus, along with getting that the bolus down to the stomach. Okay, and down at the lower end of the esophagus, there's a sphincter. You know what sphincters are? Sphincter. S-P-H. So a sphincter is a circular muscle, right? That closes off one area from another. So there's a lower esophageal sphincter at the very end of the esophagus. We'll see why that's so important in a moment. Okay, so now the bolus is in the stomach. So once the bolus gets into the stomach, it kind of stays there a little while. So there's digestive juices there, and all of that's going to make the Big Mac piece break down and become soupy, you know, soupy in there. And then it's called chyme, C-H-Y-M-E, chyme. And in the stomach environment is different from any other part of the body as far as pH. The stomach environment is what? Highly acidic. If our blood was that acidic, we'd die instantly. So the stomach environment has a pH of 1 or lower, between 0 and 2. So anything, if I were to put some acid up here that had a pH like the pH of the stomach, it would kind of eat through it. You can see spots there. Now, so that makes you wonder, okay, so if the stomach is that acidic and the acid can eat through objects, how is it not eating through the stomach? And that is because the cells of the stomach produce a mucus barrier so the acid can't get through. Okay? Every now and then a person may be infected with a bacteria that eats through the mucus, and now the acid gets through and starts tearing down the tissue or burning through the tissue. And what is that called? An ulcer. Right. So, and also the acid sometimes gets up into the esophagus, which does not have that mucus protection. So that gastroesophageal reflux disease, GERD, that's what's happening. So that lower esophageal sphincter may not be closing all the way. So acid can jump back up into the esophagus and burn the esophagus. Okay, and that can be very serious. All right, so what is the acid in the stomach? You all should know that. The acid is called hydrochloric acid, or HCl. Okay, hydrochloric acid is the acid that is made by the cells in the stomach called the chief cells. Why would we want an environment to be so acidic in our body? What do you think the benefit of the acid may be? Okay, so it helps in breaking down the food to some extent, softening it to some degree. Good, so that's a good thought. Also, the acid can kill certain germs that get in, right? Another thing it does is it activates one of the enzymes. And that enzyme is called pepsin. So we mentioned amylase up here in the oral cavity. Now we have another enzyme called pepsin. And pepsin breaks down protein. Just remember the P's. Pepsin protein. And so pepsin doesn't have the ASE, so some of the enzymes that break down protein do not have the ASE on the end. But pepsin, so pepsin in its inactive form is called pepsinogen. Hydrochloric acid activates pepsinogen, converting it to pepsin. So let's just say we don't have acid in our stomach. What might we have difficulty digesting? Meats, good, protein. All right. So that's and another thing, we haven't mentioned absorption yet. So no absorption has started. So no glucose has absorbed, so to speak, in any part of the tract up to this point. The stomach, though, the one thing that can absorb in the stomach, and when I say absorb, you understand what I mean, right? From the digestive tract into the bloodstream. So water absorbs in the stomach, but no nutrients. Alcohol also. So if you're drinking alcohol, and especially if there's not a lot of food there, it absorbs fast into the bloodstream. Okay. So that is the stomach. Now we go to the small intestines. So in the small intestine, you're going to have the breakdown of, well, let me just list some of the enzymes that are going to be in the small intestines. You're going to have lipase. You're going to have lactase. You're going to have amylase, but this one's going to be pancreatic amylase. Sucrase, maltase. Enzyme called trypsin, and another called chymotrypsin, nucleases, ribonucleases, deoxyribonucleases. So all of those enzymes are going to be found in the small intestine. Okay, so really, aside from amylase and pepsin, all of the other enzymes that break down nutrient molecules are going to be found in what part of the tract? The small intestine. So the small intestine are the busiest part of the digestive system or the digestive tract in terms of breaking down nutrients, those breakdown reactions. And also absorption. So we haven't mentioned absorption of any nutrient to this point. So absorption of nutrients begins in the small intestine. Okay, so the small intestine is the main organ for chemical breakdown and also the main organ for nutrient absorption. Okay? That is key. So on the test, if I ask you, what part of the digestive tract do proteins begin to be digested? The stomach. What if I say carbohydrates? Where do carbohydrates start to be digested? The oral cavity, right? But it's a specific type of carbohydrate. Starch only. What about lactose? Small intestine. Okay? So most carbs begin to be broken down in the small intestine. What about lipids? Small intestine. Okay? So that's what we have going on in the small intestine. What about large? In the large intestine, you have water reabsorption, which is the main function. Water is reabsorbed in the small intestine as well. But this is the number one function of the large intestine. Water reabsorption. Okay, so what does that mean? Where is water going? Or coming from? Coming from and going. So in the large intestine, water that is in the large intestine is sent into the bloodstream. Okay, and that's very important. If that doesn't happen, you have diarrhea, right? So the water stays in the digestive tract instead of being absorbed into the bloodstream. And what happens then? A person may become, what's the problem with diarrhea? It causes dehydration. So the reason it's causing dehydration is because the water is not going into the bloodstream where it's supposed to.
So it's supposed to go into the bloodstream.
Right, that's the number one function of the large intestine, to send water from the digestive tract into the circulatory system. Then we have the rectum, which stores feces prior to elimination. And then the anus is where we eliminate. Okay? So the rectum is where we store. Now, so people who are constipated, what do you think is the problem there? So again, remember the large intestine's job is to what? Pull as much water out as possible. So the longer the feces sits in there, the more water is being pulled out, so the harder the feces becomes. So a problem is people may not be going regularly. And for people who have problems with that, as soon as they get the urge, they should get up and go. If you're sitting in class and that urge comes, you should go into the restroom and eliminate then while it's still moist. Because when you wait, again, more and more water is pulled out. Okay? So that's it. That's pretty much it as far as the functions of each area that I expect you to know. Okay? Now there are some other organs, so make sure you associate the organs to the right part of the path. So the mouth has the teeth, the tongue, the salivary glands, okay, associated there. The small intestine, what's connected to the small intestine? The pancreas, and I'll show you all a picture of that in a moment. So the small intestine, you all had the picture on the lab exam last week. The pancreas is connected as well as the liver and gallbladder. So all of those secrete materials into the small intestine. The small intestine has 3 parts. You all need to know those in order. So the part of the small intestine closest to the stomach is called the duodenum. Okay? The second part is the jejunum. Jejenum. And the third part is the ileum. Ileum. Okay? So this is showing you the duodenum right here. And you can see the liver, the gallbladder, pancreas back there, and they all have ducts leading to the duodenum. The duodenum is where all the action happens. Large intestine. The large intestines, please know that the large intestine is also called colon. And it has how many parts? 5. What is this part called? The cecum. So cecum, ascending, transverse, descending, sigmoid. So you need to know the order. No. The food materials don't go through there. Okay. So if I ask, what part of the small intestine is connected to the stomach? What part of the small intestine is connected to the large intestine? Right? What part of the small intestine is connected to the large intestine? Ileum. The small intestine. What part of the small intestine? Or what part of the large intestine is connected to the small intestine? The cecum. So that's another path in and of itself. Okay? And then what part of the colon is connected to the rectum? You all heard of colorectal cancer? So that's kind of, I guess, in that angle. All right. I think that was about it. Now let me just quickly show you that picture I was telling you about. Yeah. Okay, so notice the hepatic ducts. So you should know that the hepatic ducts lead from the what? Hepatic, what does hepatic refer to? Liver. So the hepatic ducts, the liver will be right up here. So whatever is in the liver then gets into the digestive tract by way of the hepatic ducts, which become the common hepatic duct and the bile duct, and that is the contents will be delivered into the digestive tract. Remember, there was one thing we said is eliminated from the body, from the liver. Remember what that was? We talked about it a couple weeks ago. What'd you say? Red blood cells. What part of red blood cells? The breakdown, which is what? Bilirubin. So remember, when red blood cells break down, the heme group is converted to bilirubin, which is the yellow pigment in people who have jaundice. So the one reason they may have jaundice is because that bilirubin has no way to get out. So bilirubin is eliminated from the kidneys, from the liver and kidneys, but from the liver, it comes through the hepatic duct, bile duct, going down to the duodenum. Okay, so that's how it leaves the body one way, and remember the kidneys release some of it as well. But what happens if this duct gets blocked somewhere? Sometimes, in fact, my aunt had gallstones, and her cystic duct was blocked, but that caused the bile duct to be blocked as well. So she developed jaundice, and that's what made her go get checked out. Okay. Now, the digestive function, we didn't mention, the digestive function of the liver is it produces a chemical called bile, B-I-L-E. So bile is made by the liver, and then it's sent to the gallbladder where it's stored. So the gallbladder stores bile and then releases it out into the duodenum at the appropriate time. Okay, so the liver produces or makes bile. The gallbladder stores the bile. What is bile important for? It's a bile is a salt material, and what it does is it makes lipids easier to digest. Okay, it's called a lipid or fat emulsifier. Kind of softens it up so it can be mixed with the digestive material. And so the bile is delivered then whenever there's lipids in the diet. So whenever lipids are coming through the digestive tract, bile is sent into the duodenum to break it down. Okay? Actually, it doesn't break it down chemically. It's more of a mechanical digestion. So it helps. You can think of bile as helping lipase to be able to break down lipids better. Okay? All right, that's it.